faceoff. Shoots it deflected right in. Peter has a safe rebound. Stopped by Peter Angelo. I don't believe that save. Neither does Peter Stastny. He can't believe the save that Peter Angelo just made on him as Frankie Sparkman on that maneuver there to stop and rob Peter Stastny. He get 5 to 10 for that.
Hello and welcome to episode 122 of Tendy Talk, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network. I'm your host Joe, better known as Wash Up Goalie on social media. It's been a while since you last heard from me. The break was not planned, and I did not intend to take as much time off as I did. But I've had a lot going on, from work and home renovation projects in our new home down here in Georgia, to my son's baseball and taking kids on college campus visits. With so much going on, something had to take a back seat, and that was the podcast. The podcast, being a one-person show, takes up more time than I think most realize to produce an episode. I'm excited to be back this week, though, making it a 2025 goal to be back with more regularity, so I'm now working on lining up future guests. This week, I chat with longtime mask painter Jason Livery of Livery Art Studios. So, without further ado, let's get to the conversation with Jason. So thanks for joining me on the podcast. We've been texting back and forth, and it's good to have you on, a fellow Chicagoan who's moved south.
Right, exactly. That's why I'm outside right now. It's about 74, 75 degrees, so I'm just chilling on the patio.
Yeah, I love it. The other day, people were talking about, it's getting so cold, and I just kind of looked at him and said, it got so cold I had to put socks on.
Exactly. Here, let me go put some sweatpants on because it's so cold right now.
Yeah, I have not worn a jacket since we've moved down here a little over a year and a half ago, and I was picking my son up from school yesterday, and there were like 40 parents in line in front of me, and half of them were wearing big winter coats, and it was upper 60s, and I was just like, what am I missing here, people?
It's the same thing here. It gets like high 60s, low 50s, and everybody's got big down jackets, you know.
Yep.
I'm just like, what's going on? It's not that cold, you know.
Yeah, I remember it was last year. I had gone to the grocery store, and the lady was like, it was right before Christmas, and she's like, it's getting cold out there, like, take care of yourself. And I was wearing short sleeves, and I was looking around me like, she's joking, right? Like, but you know, I get it. Down here that they're not used to it,
right.
And when they do get the winter weather, they don't have the infrastructure in the city of Atlanta. They have 2 snowplows. They don't have the brine pre-treatment to combat the ice and the ice storms. It's like, I get some of the hysteria. So like, I'll pick on them, but at the same time, I'll be like, I get why some of this stuff's ridiculous.
Right. I've been down here for so long that I was in Indianapolis last week, and it was freezing. I mean, it snowed a couple of days that we were there, and I was just instantly reminded of how much that I hate the cold. Like, I just want to go back. I was freezing. I mean, my face was like, I felt like my whole face was about to fall off. It was so cold, and I mean, but it wasn't that cold. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like in the 20s, which was, it's not that bad when you live up north, but
yeah, you're just not used to it.
Exactly. You know, I'm like, oh no, I can't wait to go home. The day I got back, it was in the 70s. I got in my pool, and I'm like, I'm good.
When we had our backyard ice rink, 70-degree weather, that was go skate around in just a sweatshirt, because by the time you get moving, you're going to be, sweating and everything. So
right.
But I mean, that was one of the things where that last winter we were in Minnesota. I mean, it was a bad winter. We had snow on the ground for over 100 days straight. We had the 3rd snowiest winter on record. And, it's 30 below before the wind chill, and you walk outside and your face physically hurts. And you're like, why do I live here? Yeah. And people are like, oh, watch out for the humidity when you move down there. I'm like, I will take humidity any day over wind chill because my face doesn't hurt in the humidity. It's just like,
Right.
oh, I'm gonna sit down and not do anything.
Right.
But yeah, it's one of those things. My daughter had some fun at school. They were kind of picking on her for being, from up north, and she was trying to explain to them, when you go to the shopping mall in the wintertime, you pick, you'll circle until you can get a good parking spot because it's did you bring a jacket?
Right.
And if you did, you want to carry it around the mall for as long as you're going to be there. But also B, what's the parking lot situation? Are you going to have to be puddle jumping over all of the slush and everything else? And then
Right.
C, it's the cold. Yeah, there's a spot over there, but I'm going to be frozen before I even get into the mall. And they're like,
Right.
no,
Right. Right.
it can't be like that.
And you never know how deep that little slush puddle is.
Right. Yeah. There's that great scene from Groundhog Day where it's like, oh, it's not that deep, and he goes, halfway into the hole.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's a different world. But so you're a North Sider from Chicago. I'm a South Sider, but we still like the Cubs. So that
I won't hold the South side
us.
against you. I won't hold the South side against you. But
yeah, it's one of those things. I came from the area where they have the Southside Irish Parade, so there's some redeeming quality there.
Yeah.
But Dad was a city worker, so we had to live in the city limits. But I could see Evergreen Park from my bedroom window. We were a half block from the city limits.
I got you. That's awesome.
Yeah, but as I was saying over text, Dad was a fireman, so I went to work with him as often as I could, and for a number of years, he was on the hazmat unit, and it was out of Engine 22's quarters at Madison I was Madison and Laughlin was when he was at 103 over by Armitage and Larrabee.
Yeah,
over there in the Lincoln Park area. So I spent quite a bit of time there, and then the other firehouse I spent a lot of time. It was 103 right down the street from the United Center at Madison and Laughlin, right in the parking lot of the 911 center. And 511 was cool because of the area. Some great pizza that we would get. There's deep dish. I don't know where it was from, but it was like that thick, and about that much of it was just meat. It was the best deep dish I've ever had.
There's two types of. So you got to clarify, because people from Chicago, they don't understand. You have thin crust, you have deep dish, and you have stuffed.
Yeah.
Pizza. So whenever I'll tell people, like, hey, I get Giordano's shipped to me from Chicago all the time. They're like, oh, I had some deep dish pizza. I'm like, no, that's not deep dish. You're thinking a big thick crust and a deep dish pizza. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a stuffed pizza, and they have no clue what stuffed pizza is, and it cracks me up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember when I went to college, I went to St. Mary's in Minnesota, where like half the school is from the Chicagoland area. And one kid was asking, like, so when you're home, how do you order Chicago style pizza? And the one kid just looked at him like,
you just order
stupid?
pizza.
Yeah, we just order pizza and it arrives that way. But everybody thinks we order pizza and it's always deep dish. It's like, no, your everyday pizza is thin crust. And I like to explain to people that deep dish is special occasion pizza.
Right.
You're not eating, it's delicious. It's fantastic, but you're not eating it every day. Thin crust, I'll eat it every day, especially if it's from Vito and Nick's.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like it's good stuff. Now, since moving to Atlanta, we found a place not too far from us. It's a Chicago joint, Bobby G's, and I haven't had their deep dish yet, but their thin crust is good. They got a good Italian beef sandwich. They got a good Maxwell Street Polish. So it's like, okay. Haven't gone there on a Sunday yet to watch the Bears because, quite frankly, I don't want to watch the Bears these days. Yeah. It's too depressing. Right. But they got all the sports stuff all over the place. And the other thing I like about the place is they only got like 5 things for the White Sox up there because they probably felt like they needed to. But it's all like Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs. They even have more Chicago Sky stuff than they do have White Sox. It's like, all right, well done.
we had a pizza place here when we moved down. It was called Bootleggers. The owner was from Chicago, and he would have all the ingredients shipped down.
Yep.
And the pizza was phenomenal. I mean, it was just like I was at home. And he got so popular and so big, he ended up selling to another company, and they took it, and then they just ruined it from there. They're like, oh, well, we're not going to import this. We're not going to do this. And then it just went downhill, and there hasn't been anything like it since. I mean, you can't get beef here. You can't get good hot dogs.
Yeah.
There's a couple of good Euro places, but other than that, I mean, you can't get it. It's like we just ordered Portillo's beef for our Christmas party. We're gonna have Portillo's for Christmas, and I got those stuffed pizzas from Giordano's, and
yep.
But I gotta have everything shipped here unless I go home.
I just read that Portillo's is opening a location in the Atlanta area, about 40 minutes from us in Marietta. So it's like, okay, that's gonna be their first one, which means their second one will probably be even closer to me, because they started opening locations in Minnesota before we left, so I was able to get my fix. But it's like, yeah, there's just certain things. But it's funny you say that he ships the ingredients, because I was reading a book on brewing beer, and they were talking about the water and how it makes things different, and why Guinness in America is different than Guinness in Ireland, and it's the water. And they were talking about Giordano's when they opened up in Florida. They were using the exact same recipe, the exact same ingredients, but it wasn't the same. And it was because of the water. So then they started shipping the dough from Chicago, and it tasted exactly the same. And it was the pH balance of the water. And it's crazy on how you think just because you're using the same, everything else is the same, that water can mess with the taste that much.
Yeah. I've been experimenting for months and months, trying it, because I wanted to make my own thin crust pizza, And I had every recipe. I've tried them all. I'm like, it doesn't taste right. It doesn't taste right. I don't know what's going on. And I finally got the sauce right, but I can't get the crust right. So I can only buy what we got here. But other than the crust, I can get my pizza to taste just like it. The sauce and everything else tastes perfect, but it took me a while. I had to keep experimenting a little bit here, a little bit there, and I finally got it.
Well, we were just spoiled growing up, because where bad pizza is even good pizza. And when I moved to Minnesota, it was tough finding a good pizza place, but there's a good place in downtown St. Paul, Red Savoy's, good pizza. It's the thin crust, but then there's this place that opened up, Pizzeria Pezzo in White Bear Lake, Minnesota. True Chicago thin crust. And the chef that opened it up was originally from Chicago. So it was like, and that's in my top 5 for thin crust. It was so good. And my kids are actually going back to Minnesota just after Christmas to visit friends. Mm-hmm. And they're both like, we need some deep dish from Pezzo. Like, that's one of the things they miss is deep dish, because we haven't found it here yet. There's a place right down the road from us, Rosati's. I was like, all right, with the name like Rosati's, you got to have a good.
Right.
No, it was terrible. I mean, the ingredients weren't bad, but it was the crust. The crust can make or break a pizza. It's crazy. So anyway, we're both grew up in Chicago. I got to imagine you discovered the great game of hockey watching some of those great Blackhawks teams of the 80s and 90s then.
Oh yeah. Grew up a Hawks fan. And then, my first NHL team I painted for was the Blues. So obviously I got flack. My whole family, all my friends, they're like, come on, you can't paint for the Blues. What are you doing? And so I try to keep everything neutral now. Yes, I'm a Hawks fan from the heart, because that's what I was raised on.
That's who you root for.
Right. But when the Hawks and the Blues play, it's like, all right, well, I kind of want the Hawks to win, but I'm good either way.
Yeah. That was like when I moved to Minnesota for college, that was the Wild's first year. So I've been a Wild fan from the get-go. But when I would go to the Hawks Wild games, I'm always wearing my Hawks jersey. Like, oh, you lived here so long, I was there 25 years. It's like, oh, you can't be a Wild fan. I was like, no, I am a Wild fan, except when they play the Blackhawks.
Right.
It's very simple. Any other day of the year, I'm cheering for the Wild. But when they face each other, no, won't do it. It's like Canada. I got no issues with Canada, but every 4 years, I don't care about the Summer Olympics. They're never a threat. But in the Winter Olympics for 2 weeks, Canada might as well be Iran. You know, it's just one of those things that I get it. So, did you play hockey growing up, or is it just your artistic skills have gotten you so closely aligned with the sport?
Yeah, I never played for. I mean, we played on the street, pond hockey, stuff like that. I never got really crazy into it. I actually fell in a pond when I was a kid, which kind of scarred me for life. But no, it's just my love for hockey, and then being an artist. It kind of went hand in hand. I never really fully played in an actual organization or anything like that. But I mean.
Well, I mean,
you know how it is. You growing up as a kid, we're out in the street, just like old Wayne's World, game on.
I was just going to say street hockey in Chicago at that time, it was hard not to drive through a neighborhood and find kids playing street hockey. It's just like kids playing sandlot baseball or, shooting hoops in the inner city. You'd see the kids they'd have that net. You move it around. And what I loved about neighborhood street hockey is the mix of ages. I remember being like this fifth grader, and I knew there were these high school kids that played down the street, and me and my buddies would go over, and they're like, all right, let's just mix up teams, so it's not all the older kids versus the younger kids. It's just like, we all just want to have a good time, so that's
right. It didn't matter. It was just the more the better. Everybody it was just the love for the game.
Yeah, exactly. Hockey in its purest form, and it's interesting having played at higher levels and coached and gone to some coaching clinics. They talk about some of the greats of the game, and they weren't playing year round. They weren't on the ice 6, 7, 8 times a week. But where they really developed, it wasn't in practice or games. It was that unstructured play, whether it be street hockey or pond hockey. It's just let the kids go out there and have fun. That's where they develop their skills.
Right.
So, you talk about your art, and I have a daughter who's very artistic, contemplating going to the Savannah College of Art and Design, which is kind of like the MIT of art schools, if people don't know what it is. When did you kind of realize, you've got this skill, because
So, I mean, obviously, growing up in Chicago, airbrushing and things like that wasn't a common thing. You couldn't like when you come down here in the South and you go to a mall, you got airbrush artists everywhere painting T-shirts. It's kind of a culture here. In Chicago, that it wasn't like that, and I kind of started out just graffitiing and everything. I'll be painting trains and just with spray cans, and I just did whatever I could. I was sick. I'm gonna move out of this. The sun is getting super hot. I'm gonna move to the other side over here.
Southern problems.
Yes. I'm burning up over there. So I was in high school. I was, I don't know, about 15, 16 years old. And I went to a buddy of mine's house after school one day, and he was airbrushing a T-shirt, and I never seen it before. I never knew what that was.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching him, like I can do that. That doesn't seem too hard because I've always been able to draw, and like I said, I did graffiti and things like that, and so I hit my mom up for Christmas. I said, hey, can you give me an airbrush and a compressor, a little kit, the Hobby Lobby special, and and I've been doing it ever since. It's just I painted everything I could get my hands on, and it was funny that I wasn't that good. I was everybody when they start out, you're not that good at whatever you're doing.
Right.
You progress as you go. But I worked when I got out of high school. I worked for this mobile airbrush touch-up company. We used to go to different dealerships and we would touch up chips and scratches on cars and all this other stuff. And one of the guys that I worked with, he played hot. He was a goalie, and for a rec league somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
When he asked me to paint his goalie mask, I never done it before, but I'm like, sure, I can do that. I'm not gonna say no. And I painted it, and it came out okay. I mean, if I was to look at it now, I've been like, oh my God, what was I thinking? But at the time, I thought it was awesome. And there was a guy who taught goalie clinics throughout the Chicagoland area. His name was Stu Gould. It was Good as Gould. It was his goalie company.
Yeah.
And he saw it, and he got my information, and he asked me if I can paint some masks for him, because he was like a I don't know, like a not so much of a retailer, but he worked a lot with Warwick at the time.
Yeah.
He sold all the Warwick masks, and he would have me paint them for him, and that's kind of how I started. It just kind of fell in my lap, and I was just doing a mask here, a mask there, and back then I was getting paid $150 a mask to paint. It was ridiculous, but
yeah,
that's kind of how it started. It was crazy.
It's funny you mentioned the Gould camps. I was always seeing stuff for that. I went to the Darren McCluskey goalie school in the summertime. He was on the south side there and skated out of SIA most of the time. But I got to imagine, you were probably that kid that was always doodling in your school books.
Yeah.
Just kind of always. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that if teachers probably said you weren't focused, but you just weren't interested in the subject. You were interested in your art.
Right.
And, and as you discovered things like airbrushing, you were able to go down that rabbit hole. And you mentioned that time, my wife and I talk about it is we're trying to guide our kids down their passion and find their passion of that wasn't really something we knew about or parents even considered of going the artistic route. They just thought, we always saw the commercials for the starving artist, exhibits at the mall. And that's what parents thought artists were in that era.
Exactly.
So nothing against them, but they weren't going to try and nurture us to be starving artists by any means.
Yes. My dad was dead against this 100%. He's like, you need to get a normal job. You need to get insurance. You need to have a 401k plan. You got to do this. You got to, he was dead set against being an artist. He's like, no, you're not doing that.
Yeah. That's been one of the things with our kids, because they're junior and senior in high school. It's like, we're not saying you got to go to college, but my son wants to be an aerospace engineer, so he kind of has to. My daughter's got a few other interests as well, so it's looking like she's going that route. But it's like, you don't have to go to college, but you have to figure out what you're going to do to support yourself. That's all it is. You need to support yourself, and if you choose to have a family, you need to be able to support them. That's what we told them, and it's like, okay. But I think too, with art, I think there's a greater understanding of the possibilities these days of art as a career. So it's a little bit easier for kids to go down that rabbit hole and say, yeah, I want to be creative. That's kind of been fun to learn as we go down this road with my daughter. And that's what she liked about SCAD is, unlike the Chicago Art Institute, which I was hoping would have had a better presentation, because my grandpa went there, and he only reason he didn't graduate is because this little thing called World War II popped up, and that pulled him away from it. But I mean, he was a working artist up until the day he died. In fact, he was going to have a Sunday comic in the Chicago Tribune.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
I got the one remaining comic that he had on my wall frame. It's kind of hard to see there, but he had signed the contract, and I think it was, as my dad tells the story, like a week later found out he had terminal cancer, so it never got published. But he was a working artist. But that was so rare for the time. And so I was kind of like, okay, maybe Art Institute of Chicago would be really cool for my daughter to go there. And their presentation was terrible. And then we did the presentation with SCAD, and they're like, okay, so you have artistic skills. These are careers you can do with those skills. And it was like, okay, now you're talking our language. But yeah, so anyway, I don't want to go down that route. I want to talk hockey and goalie masks with you because that's what we care about. And I've been following you for a long time. In fact, I've had some goalies on that you've painted masks for. More recent episodes would have been Gustav's from when he was with the Atlanta Gladiators. Now he's back over in Europe. So you paint this first mask for, somebody you're working with. You're figuring it out as you go back then, because I know it's not like today where there's as many resources out there. My first mask that I have painted, in fact, it's actually behind my Christmas stocking here, was my high school mask, and I took it to the airbrush shop at Chicago Ridge Mall, because I didn't know where to go. It was like, where do you take them? We didn't have the resources back then. This was pre-internet for those kids listening too. The internet did exist, but it wasn't in every home at that point.
Websites were very, very, very minimal. You had, there wasn't very much out there, and you had to dial up the AOL.
Yep. Yeah. Mom picks up the phone and boots you off, and you're like, Mom, I was on the internet.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. We've watched that movie, You've Got Mail, with our kids, and they have, some of that stuff in the beginning and like the old technology. They're like,
right.
God, this is so long ago. We're like, no, it really wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, right. It was like right before you were born, pretty much.
Yeah. But so you're, this guy brings you the mask. Where do you even start with something like that? Because I know now from some of the stuff I've learned, like, you got to sand it down, you got to prep it. Like, did you even know or think of any of that stuff back then? Or did you have anybody kind of mentor you along the way?
I had a basic idea how everything worked. Just because I never really painted a goalie mask. I painted tons of other things, and the fundamentals are pretty much the same. You gotta prep, you gotta sand, you gotta all that stuff is pretty much the same. It was a learning curve because I had to learn how, okay, well, what do I mask off? Back then, padding and stuff didn't just come out of the mask like the Bowers and stuff like that nowadays. You had to mask everything off and try to keep everything nice and clean, and making sure that the products that I'm using are going to hold up. You're not using a rattle can clear coat. So yeah, it was a learning curve, but the more I did it, the more I understood. There wasn't really I never really paid attention to what others were doing. I just I've always been self-taught and kind of thought that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it on my own. I don't want to learn from somebody else. I don't know. I'm just kind of weird like that. I'm still kind of like that now. There's so many people out there on the internet and all these different, Facebook or YouTube videos and TikToks and stuff. And I don't watch any of them. I just kind of do my own thing. But yeah, I just kind of learned myself and took it from there.
I'll say I do watch some of those videos just because I'm in complete awe of the art you mask painters can do. Because not only are you creating art, but it's on a 3D object. It's one thing to paint or draw on a piece of paper that's flat, but you guys are taking this on this 3-dimensional object and making it work. And to me, that's just, it's fascinating. And to see the process, I almost wish more goalies did understand the process so that when you give them a price for how much a mask costs, they're not like, oh, I'll go find somebody to do it cheaper. It's like, okay, well, when it comes back and it looks like crap, don't come, complaining back to me saying, can you fix this? Because I can do it, but it's going to be the same price.
Right. Exactly. So, hold on one second. I got a construction guy coming by. everybody wants to. Yeah. Sorry. All right.
No
Go ahead.
problem.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so I've talked to a couple different mask painters. Some of I would say the painters that have been around for a while. I saw you were like in my picture from Frank Cipra earlier. I would say one of the goats of mask painting. He's painted
Yep.
some of the most iconic goalie masks. Don Strauss is another one. From the Armadillo.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in looking at some of their earlier stuff, like you said, it was like everybody has something to learn from day one, even to today. I
Right.
see even a guy, Dave Art, or the fellow from Sweden. He
Sweden.
does some crazy stuff. Some stuff I think is cool, some stuff I don't. But he's always trying new stuff because he's learning new skills, and I think that's what I like about Dave. And I see that in some of your stuff too. Is that it's always changing and evolving, and no two masks that I've seen you come out with have kind of a similar feel to them, unless you're doing it for a team where you can tell it's like that's what they wanted.
Right.
But it's like there's always something different and new to it, and I've seen you get some flack from other painters because you paint more than goalie masks. So I remember seeing one, I don't remember who it was, commenting like, "Yeah, we only paint goalie masks, not football helmets." And I'm sitting there going, "Who cares?" Right. Every painter is trying to put food on their table, and this particular mask painter, I forget which one it was, but I remember going to their site and seeing they had painted motorcycles and motorcycle helmets as well. It's like, okay, but you draw the line at football helmets. Like, if somebody's going to pay you,
right,
you're exactly. You're going to paint football helmets too.
Right, exactly. I'm like, I'm a full-time artist. I don't. A lot of these guys, they have normal jobs. They have jobs.
Mm-hmm.
They work normal, and they paint on the side. And this is something that I do full time. I built a business this way, and this is what that pays the bills and allows me to have the lifestyle that I have. And if somebody else is going to come along and say, "Hey, can you paint this or can you paint that?" I try to stick with helmets because my shop is kind of geared to that. The way I have my shop, I have my booth and everything. It's all kind of situated to where I'm comfortable with how I don't want to get something that's like, I don't want to get a hood of a car and then I have to figure out, okay, well, where am I going to fit this thing? Or, so I just kind of stick with helmets, but a football helmet or a racing helmet or whatever, they come to me and they're like, of course I'm going to do it. And obviously those things are going to cost, I'm going to charge more because they're more involved. And I'm not going to say no. Just because I've been painting goalie masks nonstop for the past 20 plus years, somebody gives me a racing helmet, of course I'm going to paint it. It is what it is.
There's fewer weird contours on a racing helmet. Why not?
Right. Exactly. But racing helmets is a total different beast. I mean, I could paint a goalie mask in maybe 1 to 2 days, and it's pretty simple. But when it comes to racing helmets, there's so much more involved because the finish of a racing helmet, it has to be so much more pristine than a goalie mask. Guys that a goalie's, they want a cool mask, obviously, yes, and they want it to hold up and last as long as they can throughout the season. But as far as like the actual finished job, they're not as particular as a racing guy is. So say you're getting your car custom painted. When you look at the car, you want it to look like a showroom. You want it glass. You want it so smooth. You don't want to see any imperfections. That's how racers are with their helmets. Goalies, they don't know what that is. As long as it's shiny and it's okay, that looks cool, they're happy. You can have I've seen. I'm not going to name any. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but I'd say probably 75% of the painters out there, you get their masks and you get a paint job for that they did in your hands, and you look at it and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Did they clear coat this thing in a windstorm. I mean, with a sandstorm. I mean, it's ridiculous. But
well, not only that, I've seen a lot of sloppy lines. It's like the attention to detail and the taping. And to me, that's what separates the good painters, yourself, included, from the hobby painters.
Right. And cameras hide all that.
Yeah.
Social media hides all that. You got to see that in person.
Yep.
So you'll see all these people, that looks badass. So you see all these comments on something somebody painted, and I'm looking at it, I'm like blown out of my mind. Like, are you kidding me? But they can't see that because cameras hide everything.
Yep.
But if you put that in front of somebody in person and another one that's how it's supposed to look, then they'll be like, oh yeah, I understand. It's just like tattoos. People are like, oh, can you tattoo? And you look at these tattoos and they look like garbage, but they think it's just the most awesome thing in the world until you do one that how it's supposed to look. And then they look at it and like, oh yeah, no, that one looks like garbage.
Yeah.
So it is. I've learned to deal with it. It's just part of the industry, and it is what it is.
When we were going back and forth talking about getting you on, you had some interesting comments about the industry and how even before we talk about dealing with pros and college and all of that, just I would say the rec league goalie, the youth goalie, how frustrating is it at times when they just think it's, I want to pay $400 and get it back in 3 days.
Yeah, I don't do it. Simple as that. I mean, you'll see guys, they're selling paint jobs on Etsy for $500. I'm like, it's not even worth my time. I'm not even going to look at it for $500. Yeah. I mean, back in the day, yeah, I was, because I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But as you develop and as you become a professional and you build up a clientele and a reputation, that also increases your price.
Yep.
Because people are coming to you because they know that they're getting a top quality product. So, so that's just, when they come to me and they say that, I'm just like, kick rocks, you can, here's somebody, I'll give you a name and you can go, they'll paint it in their backyard, and, it is what it is, but don't hold me against it.
Yeah. As I always tell people, you're going to get what you pay for.
Exactly.
And to get a quality mask, you're looking at a minimum of $1,200
at least. Yeah.
That's the starting point, and you're going to go up from there. Now, if they're going up into, the 5, 6, 7, 8, they better be putting some solid gold on there. But there's a range that you're going to be looking at. And that's why the mask I currently wear is still black, because I'm a dad, and it's like I can spend that on myself or my kids. What am I going to do? And then the other part is I've got so many ideas what I want to do to it, but not enough creativity to actually put it on paper to hand over to an artist and be like, what can you do here to actually make this cool? So it's like, it's one of those where I'm like, I have too many ideas going in my head. So I'm like, it looks better on better black right now. So you start painting, and I know in talking to different mask painters, there's always that drive to, you want to get a mask in the pros. What was that first pro mask you did?
That was for Brian Elliott when he was the backup for the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah.
So I lived here in Mississippi 20 plus years ago, and I had I've lived all over the place. I kind of moved around and kind of went, I was on Discovery Channel and all these different other TV shows. I was painting motorcycles and all these different things. And at the time I was living in Indianapolis, and Hurricane Katrina hit, and my daughter and my ex-wife lived here in Biloxi, and their house was damaged. So my daughter had to come live with me for a while. And we she lived with me for about, I don't know, about almost a whole year or so. And once everything was kind of settled down for her mom, she, it was time for her to go back home. And um, I, was just kind of like, what, I hate being a far. I mean, I was always visiting. I was always coming
Yeah.
down. I was always seeing. But I was like, what, I liked her being close. So I'm like, I'm gonna move down there and figure something out. I ended up opening up a T-shirt shop in the mall, just because, just to make money. I didn't really care. I just wanted to be here.
Yeah.
And that's when I met my wife. My wife was in the Air Force at the time. She was an officer, and we were married. I don't know, about 2-3 years before she got her first orders to move from here, and we ended up going just outside of St. Louis. She was stationed at Scott Air Force Base in Belleville, Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of where this whole goalie mask thing, like really kind of started. I mean, I was painting goalie masks, but just it wasn't like my main focus.
Yeah.
And
This is when they came in.
yeah, just whenever somebody, hey, could you paint one, or they asked or whatever. And she had to do like 3 months of training in Wichita Falls, Texas. We were at Sheppard Air Force Base, and for 3 months, I was sitting in this little TLF on base. I wasn't doing anything. I was bored out of my mind, and I was, playing Xbox every day because I didn't have nothing else to do. And I would think I was playing NHL like 2000. I don't even know what it was, but that's kind of like where, like, what? Because I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I'm like, I can't paint motorcycles, and I can't do all these different things. Open up a shop, because she was an officer, so we had to move every 4 years.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to open up a shop, build a clientele locally, close in 4 years, move to whatever base we were going to next, open up a shop, start over. Yeah, and so it was going to be like that for her rest of her career. So I was like, man. So then that's kind of where the goalie mask thing popped in my head, and I'm sitting in this TLF, and I'm literally writing my whole business plan, what I was going to do, how I was going to do it, all in this little TLF on base in Wichita Falls, Texas. And once I had it all laid out, I started contacting teams. I'm like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do, blah, 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 blah. And by the time we got to Belleville, Illinois, when she got done with that training, I already had 2 masks sitting at the house, the house we were moving into, waiting for me to paint. And I was like, so it was kind of cool. So I got there, I painted those helmets. I started like kind of developing my marketing plan of what I was going to do. And, it just so helped. It helped me that we were in St. Louis, or just outside of St. Louis, because it's a hockey town. If our first duty station was like Hawaii, there's no way I would have been where I'm at right now,
Right.
So I went to the rinks. I set up little displays. They had like equipment days, like Johnny Max and some of these other companies that would be out there, and they would put all the equipment out there. Kids would come out and they could try it, skate around the
demo
rink.
days.
Demo days. And so I would set up a little display on those demo days and kind of build up reputation. I was doing youth masks for, the parents would come to me, hey, I want my son's mask. I started doing all that. And I got in with a lot of the sporting good stores in the area. And it just so happened that one of the sporting goods stores that I worked with, the guy that worked there, he ended up becoming the assistant equipment manager for the St. Louis Blues. So Brian Elliott was the backup at the time, and he had gotten a mask painted by a guy that I'm not going to say his name, but he was doing all of his masks prior to that, and he got it, and he didn't like it. He was like, I'm not going to wear it. This is not what I want.
Yeah.
And so he told, so my guy told him, hey, I got a guy local, I'll give him a call. He'll come out and, talk to him and see what happens. So, so he gave me a call. I went to the practice rink. I met with Brian. He gave me his mask. He told me what he wanted, kind of gave me an idea of what he wanted. I seen what he had. I had to sand all that off and redo it. But I ended up doing it. Like, literally, I stayed up all night. I did it, and I brought it back the next day. I mean, I painted this was my break. This was my end. So I did everything I could. I got it done. I brought it back, and he loved it. He was like, "This is awesome." And while I was talking with him, Yaro Halak was the starter at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He came through, was looking at it, and he's like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." I mean, obviously in his accent, his Slovakian accent, but he's like, can you paint my back plate?" He wanted to do a portrait of Pavel Dimitri on his back plate, which is a very good friend of his, and obviously we knew, he was on that Slovakian hockey team that
Yep.
died in that plane crash, and he played for the Blues as well. So the whole Blues organization, obviously knew him and everything. So I painted a portrait of him, scoring a goal and everything on the back. It was pretty cool, and I brought it back, and when I did, I mean, you could see guys in management that was looking at it before I gave it to Yarrow, that it kind of brought tears to their eyes a little bit. It was
Yeah.
pretty sentimental. Yarrow loved it. Next thing you know, literally the absolute next day, I'm getting phone calls nonstop. Fox Sports, NHL Network, all these sporting outlets are calling me, and I'm like, how do you get my phone number? Well, I wasn't like a business where I had
Yeah.
a shop, and they're all wanting to interview me, and literally, it was like on the front page of the Slovakian newspaper in Slovakia, this portrait, and from that point on, it just took off.
Yep.
I didn't really have to do anything. The equipment manager for the Blues at the time, Bert Godin, me and him became really, really good friends. He helped me out a lot, got me into some different shows that they do, like as far as equipment shows with the NHL, and talked to a lot of other teams for me, and he just kind of paved the way for me. So I had to really give him a lot of credit for that. And
Well, it's a really small, tight-knit community.
it is. It's just like the other. It's just like literally a couple of days ago. So you're saying small knit community. So Tim Boron, he played for the Rapid City Rush. It was the ECHL team at the time. Well, he works for Bauer now, and Bennington, the goalie for the Blues, he texted me about a week ago, wanting me to do a special project for a friend of his, that he wanted to do something for.
Yeah.
And I get this mask in the mail to paint for him, and it was Tim Boron was like his rep. And so here's a little post-it note inside on the mask saying, "Hey, Jay, it's a long time no talk to you. It's a small world." I'm like, "Oh my God," I'm like, "Here, I did a mask for you forever ago when you were in ECHL, and now you're a rep for Bauer." And it's just it's kind of cool how that kind of works out.
Yeah, well, and it's like I know I got my equipment through Vaughn, and I've had back and forth with their pro rep, Ev Bomarito, and Ev's an awesome guy, and it's just listening to him talk and some of the other stuff. It's like, yeah, it's just this small community where a guy might leave a team, but he's probably going to another team, or like, to your point, it's a goalie who is done playing and now he's still with the team, and so they just keep that Rolodex. It's one of those things. So for the fan that's curious, when you get a pro mask, are you working with the goalie? Are you getting direction from the team? Or, is a little bit of back and forth? Or are they just like, do whatever you want? Here are the restrictions. Here are not the restrictions. I say it because I've heard through the grapevine that now the Blackhawks, they have some restrictions on what can and can't go on mask. We're never going to see another Jeff Hackett mask is my understanding. So what's it like working with the goalie and or the team when a mask comes in?
A lot of things have changed. I've steered away a lot from painting with the NHL. The past, I don't know, maybe 5 to 6 years or so. I'll get into that later. But typically, I work with the goalie. The goalie's the one that's going to say, "Hey, he's going to tell the equipment manager, this is my painter. This is who I want to paint." The equipment manager will send me a message or email me or whatever. "Hey, so-and-so wants his mask painted. I'll get the mask out to you. Then I'll contact the goalie, because typically I've already been working with him before. And so
Mhm.
I have his contact info. I'll either text him or email him or whatever, and I'll get his ideas. We'll throw something together. I'll throw a little quick mock-up to kind of get see how it's going to look. Obviously, I got to send it to the equipment manager so they can get it. They'll approve it. We've had masks. I've had masks in the past that we've painted them, and the equipment manager was like, "No, that's not going to happen. We're not. He's not going to wear that." So we've had to redo it. But yeah, so I'll do a little quick mock-up. I'll send it to the equipment manager. They'll approve it. So they say, "Yeah, we're good to go." And then I just wait on the mask to arrive, paint it, build a team, and send the mask back, and there we go. But a lot of these guys, like I said, a lot of these guys I've been working with, um, like Bennington and some of these guys, or Jake Allen and a lot of these guys, they were in the AHL, they were in the farm teams at the time, and so I've been working with them for so long that they just send me a text and say, hey, this is what I want for next season, and then I just wait for the equipment manager to order the mask and send it to me.
So, and that makes sense. And, especially when you get those long-standing relationships, when it comes to the masks themselves, see, I remember growing up and you'd see a goalie, they'd have one mask for the whole season.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they'd wear the same mask for several seasons. And it most likely was a different mask each season, just getting, repainted.
Mm-hmm.
Now you get goalies getting a new one every week, it seems. Are the teams are picking up that tab, right? Or are there
Yes.
goalies that they're like, no, this is what I want. I'm picking it up.
No, the teams pay for them.
Yeah.
It's pretty much what the goalie says is what they're going to do.
Okay.
No,
Which
go ahead.
blows my mind even more that they get so many in a year. Some of these guys.
It's not so much that they get so many. It's they have specialty events. They have
Yeah.
the cancer awareness. They have military night. They have all these different things. And typically those masks, the goalies have nothing to do with them. It's the equipment
Right.
manager, the organization, and they're saying, hey, we're having this.
And they're going to raffle it off.
Exactly. So typically those masks I don't deal with the goalies on. It's just that's all team. That's all marketing. That's all them trying to do something for whatever organization they're going to donate the money to or whatever. But the game masks, the ones that they're going to wear for the season, are the ones that I deal with the goalies directly, typically.
Okay. So you don't just work with NHL goalies. You work with the different levels of pro hockey. I've seen you're doing college masks all the way down to, us beer leaguers.
Yep.
You mentioned you don't do much with the NHL anymore. I know you used to do a lot with USA Hockey, but then they put an unreasonable time frame. It was like 24 hours. They wanted 3 masks, if I remember.
Yeah, no, it was 2 days, and I had 4 masks to do in 2 days, and I was pretty much like, it's not going to happen. And
over Christmas, nonetheless, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was told if I didn't have it done, then I would never work for USA Hockey again. And I told them, well, kick rocks. It is what it is.
Well, and that's just an unreasonable request to do 4 masks by hand, which I think is why it seems like all their masks now are just vinyl wraps.
Yeah, they're all wraps now. A lot of those guys just go to the wrap route because it's quick and easy and less expensive.
Yeah.
And COVID kind of did a lot of that too. A lot of these teams they really buckled down on what they spend. It never really bounced back since COVID. A lot of these guys, a lot of these AHL teams, they were in charge of their own budgets, their own gear, and they would order their own stuff. And during COVID, their NHL affiliate would cover the cost of everything, and the equipment manager for the NHL team, their affiliate, would handle it all, and they were pretty much, their hands were tied. They couldn't do anything, and some of them bounced back, some of them didn't, and it's just been a whole different world since then. But yeah, everybody's gotten cheaper and cheaper when it comes to that, but when it comes to paying for a goalie mask, but it's like, okay, well, why do you want me to be cheaper on painting it when inflation is skyrocketed?
Yeah,
my cost on everything is skyrocketed, but you want me to paint cheaper for you because you're supposed to be somebody that, is supposed to, like, I'm supposed to bend over backwards for, but I don't get anything in return.
It's
So,
like my wife and I did wedding photography for a while, and we always loved it'll be good for the exposure. It's like, okay, well, can I use that exposure to pay for my grocery bill?
exactly.
It doesn't work that way.
Right. Okay. So I got some exposure, but I haven't seen anything from that exposure, and maybe
Yeah.
until like 6 months later for a mask for $600 that somebody wants me to do. I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
No. Yeah. If you can
I- I'm,
guarantee
I'm,
me.
one thing that I've learned, I'm an artist,
Yep.
but I'm also a businessman. I'm self-made. I'm very business oriented as far as how I'm going to run my business and what I'm going to do, and I market myself very, very well. Where a lot of artists don't have those qualities, and they just think that just because they can paint really good, everything is just going to fall in their lap, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work that way, And people look at me like, "Oh my God, you told them to no, you told them to go." It's not feasible for me to. Yeah, I can say, this is my client. I got yada 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 as a client, but if I'm not making that much money or it's not benefiting me, then other than saying that these clients are mine, it's why.
Well,
At the end of the day, I still got bills to pay.
I was
It's
just
nice.
say,
It's nice to say that, but I still have to pay my bills. You know what I mean?
well, exactly, because you can paint for the one person who wants you to do it on the cheap because they have a name,
Mhm.
or you can paint for the person that's going to pay you what you're asking. You're always going to take the person that's going to pay you what you're asking over the
Exactly.
other one.
Exactly.
It's there.
Why am I going to paint?
Yeah.
Why am I going to paint 3 or 4 masks for peanuts?
Fraction.
Right.
Yeah.
When I can paint 1 or 2 masks and get paid double that.
Yeah. At a
That
rate that is right in line with all the other
exactly.
good
Exactly.
mask painters out there.
And those other ones that are paying top dollar just because they're not a high profile goalie, I don't care.
Yeah.
Money's money. I'm gonna paint for them. I mean, it's nice to say I painted for so and so, but when I'm making double what you're going to pay me, I'm going to paint for that person. I mean, and maybe in the beginning when I first started, it might not have been that way, but I've built a resume, and my work speaks for itself.
Right.
These are the people that I've worked for. Yes, I might not do a whole lot of profile people now, but I've worked for them. This is what I've built up, and now I'm chasing the dollar. I'm not worried about a name or who you are or anything else.
Because
If you're going to pay me what I want and pay my bills, then that's who I'm going to cater to.
the work speaks for itself. And like we said, you got bills to pay. And
Exactly.
so how fun is it from the youth goalie to the pro goalie when you get those videos of them opening that box up, seeing that mask for the first time? How fun is it to see those videos?
It is cool. It's very gratifying. You obviously being an artist, you want to make sure that what you've created and what you have painted is putting a smile on your client's face. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's great for the pros and some of the higher profile guys that they get excited and stuff. But man, you see these youth kids, they look up to you. They're like, "Oh, you painted my favorite goalie's mask, and I want you to paint mine." And then when they get that box in the mail, and you see them opening it up, and they're just like, their face is just like, that's probably
Yeah.
the most rewarding part of my job that I have. I mean, it's so awesome to watch those guys.
It's funny because when any goalie gets that mask back or gets a new piece of equipment, we all turn into that squirt goalie opening the box. It never fails. And the fun part too is when you walk into the locker room and see your partner, your other goalies that have gotten something new, we all sit down as if we were the one that got it too. I remember when I was in college and you'd walk in, it's like, ooh, Knowlesy got a new mask. I remember my one teammate, Alan Knowles, he got a new mask, and it was just the plain white mask. He didn't have paint, but it was the new eye tech, and like we're all just sitting there like, ooh, look at this. Like, it's just a cool, no paint job on there, but it was new. Excuse me, we all geek about it, and that's what I like about goaltending too. Is we are all in it to play ourselves and be the best out there, but we got these teammates, and we're each other's probably biggest cheerleaders at the same time, 99% of the time.
Oh yeah.
Which I'm sure that's how you get some of your business too, where one goalie gets mask painted from you. They go to a new team, and their teammates like, ooh, I like who painted that. I'm like, well, let me give you his number.
Right. Yep. It does happen that way. I've experienced where it seems to be more has to do with the equipment manager nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of where I might say a couple things that might get people a little upset, but I've noticed that a lot of times the equipment managers have a lot more say in what gets done than they portray they do. You can contact an equipment manager and say, hey, can you put a good word for me with these guys, and say, hey, have me paint their mask or show them my work or whatever. Oh yeah. They're always about saying, I let the goalies pick who they want to paint my masks. But when I talk to the goalies, because some of them have been previous clients of mine and I've worked with for years, they'll be like, no, he says who we're going to use.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it gets frustrating sometimes.
It seems like some teams have like, this is the guy, we send all of our stuff there. There's quite a few teams where I can see they send every mask off to Sweden to Dave Gunnarsson. And that's why all their masks look the same. Yeah.
So I think it was, I don't know, maybe 9 years ago. It might have been a little bit longer than that. We were all we all go to this. Well, we used to all go to this equipment show that they have every year for all the NCAA all the way up to the NHL. It's an equipment show.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave Art's there every year, and because Bauer pays for him to go, he doesn't pay for anything. He just shows up. Bauer, him and Bauer are like almost like partners.
Yep.
And so we were at the show, and that year Bauer, they had this little seminar where a lot of the equipment managers go in, and they kind of talk about new equipment and things like that. And they announced that Dave was going to be their exclusive painter for all their masks.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously, yeah, you can have somebody else paint the mask, but that's who they were pushing. They said, Dave is our exclusive painter. This is who we want. And, you put so from that point, it really screwed a lot of us, because Bauer just automatically pushed Dave Hart on everybody.
Right.
And it made it really easy for equipment managers. I'm not saying equipment managers are lazy. I'm not saying they're not. I mean, they hustle. But when they can do something that saves them time, they're going to do that, because that's one less headache they have to deal with. So Bauer made it to where, hey, just put the order in with us, a PO, you get your mask, you get it painted and everything all in one shot, one stop, bam, it's done. So obviously equipment managers are like, yeah, we're going to do that because I don't have to deal with this crap.
Yeah, I don't have to order the mask, ship it out, and then
have a painter do it, talk to the painter, get a bill from this, get a bill from that. And, if they don't write a PO for here, write a PO for there, that's less work for them. Mm-hmm. So it benefited them. And from that point on, things really changed a lot. And that's why you've seen Dave Art on a lot of masks, because that's what equipment managers did. They was like, oh, he made it easy for us. We're just going to do with that. We're not going to we're not going to have to do extra work. And,
Well, and it's interesting when you go onto any of the goalie Facebook groups or message boards. His work is impressive. It's incredible when you see it up close, but most goalies, they're not fans of it either.
They're not. You know how many you have no idea how many NHL goalies and AHL goalies that I talk to on a regular basis that absolutely do not want his work on their masks, but they still
don't have an option. Yeah,
they still have it. Yes. So, Demko, for instance, he was in Vancouver. He came to me one year. He's like, "Man, I want you to do this. I want you to paint these masks." Like, I can't stand fucking Dave Art. I'm sorry,
that's all right.
I can't stand Dave Art. His work sucks. I don't like it. He's like, I'm gonna get everybody else to kind of, my other guys. I forgot who the backup was at the time. I was like, I'm gonna have him use you too. I want you to do a mask. So I did a mask for him. We did that like 50th anniversary one or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And after that, next thing I know, he was in a Dave Art mask, and I know for a fact he didn't like it.
Yeah.
I have his text. I can show you. He hated it. He hated working with him because Dave Art doesn't listen to the goalies. Dave Art does what he wants, and you're going to get what he wants. What he wants to do, and that's what they don't like. But they are stuck with him because that's what the organization uses, and that's what they're going to do. And a lot of these guys, they don't want to create waves either in their organization. So I talk a lot of goalies now. I still have a lot of contacts in the NHL. A lot of the goalies that are playing, just because I'm not painting their masks doesn't mean I don't talk to them still. And a lot of them will tell me, they don't have the say. They don't want to cause a wave.
Right.
They'll be like, I want you to paint my mask, but the team wants us to use this guy, so it is what it is. But then when you talk to the equipment manager, they're going to say, oh, no, I leave it up to the goalie, whatever the goalie wants. And I'm like, well, I call bullshit right now because I already know. So obviously you don't know that I'm already talking to the goalie and I know what's really going on. So you're blowing shit up my ass. And the goalie is telling me another thing. So that's just one of the other reasons why I don't deal with so much with organizations anymore. Cause it just drives me crazy. And I'd rather paint for the average Joe Blow off the street. They love the work. That they're happy to pay what I charge, and they're the most ecstatic with the finished product. And I get more satisfaction with that than I do with painting for teams and organizations. Do I still paint for teams and organizations? Yes. There are goalies that I've been painting since they were in college or in high school that I'm always going to paint for, but I hate dealing with the organizations when I want to get paid. And so that's just what it is. So many people talk shit about me. Other painters say, oh, you haven't done a pro guy in so long, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's not because I can't. It's because I don't want to.
Yeah, and you don't have to.
And I don't have to. When I say, hey, you know what? You go ahead and you paint that. You tell me how much you made for that, and tell me how good you're doing in life. I'm a businessman. I'm looking at my bottom dollar. I'm looking at my investments. I'm looking at how I'm going to live, and I'm doing I'm doing a hell of a lot better than you are. So go ahead and say what you want. Do what you want. But in the end, I'm the one laughing. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and it to your point, you're treating it as the business and not the hobby that some are. Some just want to say, I got these masks in the NHL, and you're saying, yeah, I've got masks on a bunch of goalies, but I've also got a nice home down here in Mississippi with a pool and a backyard patio. Right. It's like, so
I got 2 Teslas. I got this. I'm living nice, but
who's happier when they're not painting too?
Right, exactly.
You're also not chasing down the next mask or next art project the way they probably are too.
Yes. They're very, very cutthroat, very dishonest guys out there too. They'll throw you under the bus every option they can get just to snake a job from you. It's ridiculous.
I've noticed that with some mask painters, and as I've alluded to, I've been able to speak to some great mask painters, and they're a lot like you, where it's like, hey, my work speaks for itself. People are going to come to me. But they alluded to it too, where there's some shysters out there. A perfect example is there's goalie mask collector guy. I know Don Strauss has tried to do some legal work against him from replicating his stuff.
I have too,
and rightfully so. But I remember talking to Don. He's like, if a goalie wants another painter to copy one of my designs, most notably for him, it'd be the John Van Beesbrook. He goes, that's fine because it's for the goal. But when they're trying to do it to profit the way goalie mask collector is, he goes, that's when I have the problem. But he also noted that most of the mask painters, if they have a goalie that says, hey, I want the Beezer mask, they'll reach out to Don just to kind of get his blessing. Now, he said they're probably going to do it one way or the other, but there's that respect for each other's art, right, from the good mask painters. And then there's the others that are like, I'll do whatever you want. I don't care.
Right. I get that as well. There's a few masks that I've done. Some of the masks I've done for Brian Elliott over the years, and a couple others. I'll have artists say, "Hey, I got a client that wants me to do something like this. Maybe not exactly a replica, but something similar. Is it cool? Hey, man, go ahead, knock yourself out. More power to you. Have fun. I don't care. But yeah, goalie mask collector, that dude, man. If I get my hands on him, I'd beat his ass to a pulp, because that pisses me off when they do that. They're capitalizing on our hard work and our designs just to make a buck, and they're not doing anything for it. It's not for the goalie. It's for them just to capitalize on other people's work.
And the quality of it, I've seen close-up pictures. The quality of it is just terrible. And the prices they charge, they try saying, "Oh, you're getting a painted mask." Well, the mask is basically a glorified street hockey mask,
right?
And the paint job is subpar. I should be paying maybe $120 total for what you're selling me, right, not the $2,500 plus that they're charging.
Mm-hmm.
And he's and now he's been buying up game worn equipment from some of the greats. And it's like, cool that you got all this cash to do that. More power to you.
All of us, yeah.
But there's a reason goalies in the goalie community don't like them. My question is, who's buying those masks and saying they're not? Because somebody's buying them.
yeah, somebody has to be buying them. But I don't know. I block them on all my stuff, because I'm like, I don't, if he wants to try to get images of something that I did, he's going to have to do some work for it, because I'm not going to let him sit on my social media and just take all the pictures that I got and pay somebody $50 to paint it and make all this other extra money off of it, because he knows he ain't going to paint. He's not paying those people hardly anything to paint them,
No.
So like, slave labor. It's like, it's like getting your Nikes over and child labor.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, you had mentioned before we had hopped on that you had painted Ray LeBlanc's Wolves masks. Being Chicago kids, the Wolves, they're a team I love.
Yes, me too.
They've got one of the greatest logos in all of sports.
Yes.
So that leads me to the question, what's your favorite logo to paint?
I don't know, but I'll come back to that. But as far as the Wolves go, so I had the opportunity. So one of my goalies, one of the guys that I paint for, is Adam Scheel.
Mm-hmm.
He's in Colorado this year. Last year he was with the Wolves, and it was their 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
And I got to do a 30th anniversary mask for them. And I told him, I was going over to design, and I sent it to him, and he's like, "Well, I don't know what's this, because he didn't grow up in Chicago,
right?"
I said, "I'm telling you, I'm going to paint this on your mask, and everybody that is in that organization that has been there for a period of time, or even the fans that have watched the Wolves for this amount of time, are going to love it." And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, what is that?" So I painted the Rosemont Horizon sign on the side. and a couple other iconic things on there that from back in the past.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the most rewarding masks I painted in a long time. Cause I just had so much fun painting it because my daughter was probably, I don't know, 3 years old, 2 years old. And we would take her to the Wolves. My dad, all my family's still in Chicago. My dad worked for LaSalle Banks, and they had a skybox at Rosemont Horizon, or Allstate Arena, whatever you call it. But
I still call it Rosemont.
yeah, me too. Just like the Sears Tower. So, they had a skybox, and we used to always go to the skybox when when nobody was using it in the bank, it was open for us to use. So we would go to the Wolves games all the time, and my daughter was like 2 or 3 years old at the time, and Skates used to always come in and hang out with us. And my daughter I still have pictures of it all. It was so sentimental to me. I'm like this. So when I got to do that mask, it was awesome. But as far as logos go, I don't know. I mean, I like the Hawks logo, but it's really a pain in the ass to paint.
It's very detailed.
Because it's the various colors. When you have a 2-color logo or a 3-color logo, it doesn't matter how intricate it is. It's much easier than painting a multi-color logo. So once they start doing 4 or 5 colors, then you're like, now I gotta do this. There's just so much more work involved in doing it.
I think most people think that all you do is sit there and paint, but it's just like painting a house. 95% of your job is taping and sanding.
Yes. I put everything in. So I work smarter, not harder. I use technology. So I'll bring everything into my Mac. I'll bring it in Illustrator. I'll trace everything out how I want. All the different logos. The people always say, well, "How do you get so precise? How do you get this so looking?" Well, I trace all that out and I cut it in a vinyl plotter. So when I'll cut it to size. I'll measure everything I need to do, and I'll place it on the mask. And then you peel. You'll peel sections off and paint it, and then you back mask it, and then you go to the next color. So that's why I say the Hawks is so hard because so much more. But that's that's kind of how I do things. I try to make things a lot easier for me using technology. It works out. It works out a lot better. But I think one of the logos that I like Calgary. It was a simple logo, but it was kind of cool because I like the flames coming off the sea.
And the colors.
Yeah, it was just kind of cool.
I got my old Atlanta Flames patch behind me.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Dallas is easy. I don't know, there's a couple teams that I haven't painted for that I'd like to. I like the Gulls. Their logo's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Some of these newer teams, they're getting more. They're getting a little cooler with their logos, and I haven't painted for them yet. And I'm like, that would be cool logo to paint, But
there's some neat ones out there. My favorite minor league hockey team, they're long defunct. I don't even remember what league they played in, but they're from Macon, Georgia, and they were the Macon Whoopee, and they were whooping cranes. And it was just like this cool whooping crane with a hockey stick. Is like, that is brilliant.
That's cool.
Go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you talk about the Wolves. My mom and dad waited until I was in college to get season tickets to go to the Wolves. I was like, sure, wait till I'm out of town and I can't go enjoy the tickets.
Right.
Yeah. But my dad and I was interning at ABC News going in my senior year of college. And we were out doing a story. My dad calls me. He goes, hey, you want to try and get tickets to tonight's Wolves game? It was game 7 of the Calder Cup finals. They were playing Bridgeport Sound. I was like, yeah. So we drove up to the Horizon, didn't have tickets, just went to the will call window. Mm-hmm. And we're like, you got anything for 2? And they're like, we got standing room only. We're like, we'll take it. Cool. So we get in there. My dad, of course, has to use the John. And then he wants to get a hot dog and a beer. And by the time we get to the, try and go to our standing room only section, the lights are completely out for their light show and everything. Mm-hmm. And it's just loud. And like, we can't see where we're going. And I feel a tap on my shoulder and I turn around and they try saying something. I was like, what? And they get close to my ear. They're like, I'll keep it simple. Do you want better seats? It's like, yeah, absolutely. And so I grabbed my dad. He's like, where are we going? I said, just follow me. Well, it was somebody from PR promotions, whatever, fans of the game. So they took us down low. We got to watch the game in recliners. And it wound up being a triple overtime Wolves victory. They beat Rick DiPietro in triple overtime to clinch the championship. It was like, God, I'm so glad we had recliners and didn't have to stand for this game.
Right.
And seated right next to us were two nuns. It was like just out of the movie Major League. We had two nuns sitting right next to us with their, those thunder sticks that were popular at the time, just making more noise than ever. When there was a bad call, like at one point I looked over there, it's like, you two are going to confession tomorrow, aren't you? And they're like, yep. Like they were the most rowdy, rambunctious fans ever. It was just like, oh my God, it was so fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But, and Wendell Young, he was their first goalie. He had a pretty sweet, simple mask. So that's something I want to ask you. The goalie masks of the 90s, they were much simpler. Yes. And the fan from the seats could see what's on there. And, and one of the things I like about your designs is it kind of has that 90s feel with just enough more detail to bring it to life. But it's not like, we mentioned Dave Art earlier, like there's so much going on that you have to be holding that mask to see what's going on.
Yeah. You have to be a foot from them to see everything that's going on, right?
Yeah, but that's one thing I appreciate about your masks it's kind of like that evolution of the 90s simplistic style with a little more, technique to it. So, what do you think of that evolution from kind of the super simple, just I'll call them hard lines because there's no shadowing, any in that, what are your thoughts of that evolution and almost overdoing it that some painters have gone with?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's something that I like to do. A lot of times goalies will ask me, they'll say, I want this, and this, and this, and this. And I'm like, okay, I can paint all this, and this, and this, and this, but nobody's going to see this, and this, and this, unless they're right here next to you, and I'm like, would you rather your fans enjoy your mask or do you just want to enjoy your mask? And they're like, no, well, I want my fans to enjoy it. So then that's when I'm like, okay, well, I'll try to fit some of this other stuff. I might ghost it here or there, and you might be able to see it, for yourself. But for the majority of the mask, I'm going to make it to where people can see it.
Yep.
From wherever they're sitting, and so that's kind of like I kind of like doing it that way. I try to design masks that way as well, So I want it to be, I tell them the smaller I got to fit all this stuff, the smaller it's going to be on the mask, and the harder it's going to be able to see, unless you got the Jumbotron focused right in on you and everybody can see it because it's right there in front of them. But when I see you, when I'm sitting way up there and then you're down in the goal, I don't know what the hell's on your mask.
Right.
But if you do something somewhat simplest, but still cool, adding shading and effects to give it a little bit of a 3D effect to it, you can still, even if you're still way up there, you might not be able to see the mask, but you'll be able to make it out to where that's so-and-so. That's so-and-so, because you can make out the basic of it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I like doing that, and I don't get into all the crazy, stupid effects and the glow-in-the-dark paint and all this other crap. It's stupid. It's a gimmick. Nobody plays fucking glow hockey. It's dumb.
Yeah, and they don't even when the lights are out, the goalie doesn't even have their mask on for you to see it.
They sing the national
on the net.
Right. They sing the national anthem. The helmet's on the net. It's not that dark. You can't. It's not really glowing that much, anyways. Nobody gives a shit about that. So. Don't do that crap. And but that's it is what it is.
Even if they're not a native goalie, when that anthem's playing, they better have their mask off and standing at attention,
right?
Or at least thinking about the game anyway,
right?
It's funny because most of the painters I've talked to are they feel the same way. Of course, I've really only had painters on that I like, and therefore they're the ones that I gravitate to. That have the same, so that also makes sense. But I've had asked that question of quite a few. I mean, and even one of the younger mask painters, Kyle Conan he's the Tampa Bay E-Bug that paints a lot of masks too. And I remember asking him, he's like, well, if they're going to pay me to do all that other stuff, yeah, I'm going to do it for them, but it doesn't mean I'm going to like it. It just means that's what they asked for. And I know you've painted for Scott Darling, and he had a couple different painters paint for him over the years, but I remember there was one of his Hawks masks that from afar looked really simple, but when you got really close, I remember it was in the red kind of on his forehead.
Yeah.
Like there was the bean in there and some like other Chicago landmarks. And that was the first one that I saw where it's like, there's the extra stuff, but it was done in a way that was like, all right, that was done right. Like that extra stuff was for the goalie to have it on there when he's taking it to put on, but not necessarily for the fan.
Right. That was the Stanley Cup mask. That's the one he wore when they won the Stanley Cup.
Okay, so that was yours.
Yeah.
That you painted. So yeah.
So what we did was we put a bunch of different Chicago iconic stuff in there. You know, obviously we made it bold, the logos and things like that. But all the subtle stuff was like I put the Portillo's logo in there. I put the bean. I put the Lions from the Art
Institute.
And I put the Carousel of a Navy Pier carousel. All that stuff. I put all that stuff in the background. That was a cool mask. I enjoyed it because obviously that's where I'm from. So that was a fun mask.
I will say that was not intentional bringing that one up and mentioning. It was just like I remember seeing that one. I was like, that is really. I could instantly tell Dave Art didn't do it because it wasn't over the top, for one.
It wasn't finger painted. It wasn't finger painted.
Well, I was gonna say, and at that point, he was in his ink drawing stage too. Everything was he's kind of like Van Gogh in that you can tell what stage he's in. You know, he's in his blue phase, he's in his red phase. Dave's currently in his block phase.
He's in his marker. He's in his marker phase.
It was just cool, and that it had that overall design, but like you said, it was in that red that you had all these different things that when you were up close, but that was for Scott, not for the fan, really.
Right.
And that's where my mind goes with my mask when I eventually do get it painted. It's like I want to incorporate some stuff kind of like that from Chicago, some stuff from Minnesota, having lived there, and now I'm down in Georgia. Who knows? I might include something from Georgia, but I haven't been here long enough to find anything, really cool in that regard yet. Give it time. But it's like that. That's what I'm thinking is like that's one of those masks that is in my mind when I think of what I want to do on my mask.
Right. With you being in Georgia, are you that far from the Gladiators or no?
The rink I skate at 95% of the time is their practice rink. The Gladiator.
I'm about to do a mask for D. Ritter.
Okay.
Drew.
Yeah.
So I painted for Hayter when he was in Clarksville. Clarkston. I mean, and then I've been painting for D. Ritter since he was at Michigan State.
Okay.
So what they did is they did a fan
contest. Yeah.
So I just got the mask and the artwork. I need to, once I'm done with this, I'm going to actually go in on my iPad and start designing everything. But he sent me a bunch of little chicken scratch stuff via text, and I'm going to try to put that together. But I'm going to be painting that shortly. So hopefully you'll be able to check that out since you're out that way.
Yeah, I'm on their email list. In fact, my team is organized, and we're going to be playing at the Gas South Arena at some point this season before one of their games.
Cool.
So yeah, in fact, I drive by Gas South on my way to the Duluth Ice Forum, which is right down the road from there.
Okay.
But yeah, in fact, they're off to a good start, and I was going to be reaching out to their PR people to get one or if not both of their goalies on here still this year. And I keep tagging them in Instagram from my goalie account, not my podcast account. Like I'm available for an e-bug, even if it's just for practice, I can make it. And they don't respond. I think they've seen my videos and understand that my Instagram of Washed Up Goalie is titled that for a reason. Whenever I have a good game, though, like I did this last week, and my teammates like, yeah, you were really good, and I was like, you should have seen me when I was actually good, though, guys.
Right.
But I'm trying to think of some of the other stuff we were talking about before as we were going back and forth, because there's so much. I mean, I know in talking to you, sometimes the payment from pro teams can be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to go there or not. But
I've been drinking bourbon this whole time, so I'm ready. I'm ready to lay it out. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to get too far into it, but that's another reason why I don't like paying for organizations. Some organizations are phenomenal, never have an issue, and I still pay for them.
Yeah.
But a lot of these NHL teams they're so difficult to get paid from, and I'm not a millionaire by any means,
Right.
but I work my butt off to get things done on a time frame that they want them done, and I always come through. I've never been late. I never not come through when they need something, and it's always there. And you give them an invoice, and you're waiting. Typically they have like a net 30 terms, which okay, that's fine. I can deal with that, and it is what it is. But I'd say 80% of the teams don't pay within those net 30 terms. I'm waiting 60 days, 90 days. And then the next thing I'm contacting them and saying, hey, am I going to get paid on this? What's going on? Oh, I didn't get your invoice. So, and I'm like, I call bullshit on that, because when I send the invoice, the software that I use, when you open that invoice, it shows me it's been viewed. So I know you got it. And it's just the crap that I got to deal with. I'm a one-man show.
Yeah.
I talk to the clients, I prep the masks, I sand the mask, I paint the mask, I design the masks, I clear coat them, I ship them, and I bill them. I do everything by myself. So when I got to take time and dick with a team that's getting millions of dollars a night on any given game for a $1,500 mask, it's bullshit. And it pisses me off.
For some teams, that's a 6-pack of beer.
Exactly. And I'm like, there's no reason why I have to deal with this.
Right.
And so the teams that are continually like that, I don't pay for anymore. It is what it is. I mean, I will if a goalie that I've been painting for, like say a DeRitter or a Letherman or Jeremy Smith, if some of these guys that went over to Europe and the KHL came back, or guys that I've been painting for years and years and years went to one of those teams. Yes, of course, I'm going to paint for them. But if out of the blue, Joe Blow from Calgary Flames or, wherever, Detroit Red Wings, come to me and say, hey, I want you to paint a mask. I'm like, okay, well, I can't tell them to pay me ahead of time because they're not going to do it. And I know, I already know in the back of my mind, okay, I'm going to be sitting here waiting for money. And I don't want to do that. It's not fair. If I was to ask that equipment manager, hey, let me ask you, let's you work for 2 weeks or a week, and then you have to wait 30 to 60 to 90 days to get paid. Would you want to do that? Who wants to work and wait that long to get paid? Nobody does. So why is it okay for me? Why do I have to chase you and beg you to pay me when you guys are making so much damn money? That's a drop in a hat. There's no reason for it. So that's another thing. It just irritates me, and that's why I like painting for certain clients that I know they're going to pay on time. They're going to pay me, no issues, or the average person off the street that contacts me via my website, because those masks they don't ship until I get paid, and they'll pay me immediately. Once I'm done, I send them a picture. Oh, I love it. Okay, boom. Here's your money. Boom. Okay, it's shipping tomorrow. Out the door. I'm done, and I'm happy. Everybody's happy. They got something they got. I got what I got, and I move on to the next. So.
And like as we've moved, we've done a lot of work to the house. I've done most of it, but we've had to do work with contractors, and when a contractor looks at me, he's like 50% down to get started and 50% when the job's done. I'm like, okay, fair. And why for something like this, the teams aren't like, yeah, that makes sense. It's fair.
Right. You know, I
like,
can't
no,
charge. I can't charge a deposit to a team.
Right.
So
it's crazy.
everybody else that comes to me, I only charge them $200 deposit. That covers my costs on just spending some time drawing up a mock-up or whatever to get things rolling. You know, so I'm not out that time that I spend if they end up not getting it done or something happens and whatever, or I'm waiting, 6 months because they can't afford to get the mask painted or whatever it is. But I can't charge a deposit to a team. They're not going to pay that. So I'm all in. I'm painting this. I'm giving you everything you guys want. Now you guys got it, and I'm waiting. You guys are enjoying it. You're enjoying your goalie is wearing the mask. You guys are promoting it, showing pictures. It's everything. Blah 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 blah. But I haven't seen a dime for it.
No, I totally get it, and it's not fair to you at the end of the day either. It's fun because as you're talking, I just keep going back and forth through all your different masks. And I'm like, just loving them. Except for those St. Louis Blues ones. Those I could care less about. In the Red Wing ones, if you do any more Red Wing masks, you need to do me a favor and just somewhere where even if it gets covered up, you got to put in there the little Detroit sucks. Just, it's got to be done. That old great Jeremy Piven commercial, I remember when it first came out, I was like, oh, this is gold. I actually wound up going to I think it was the first Hawks Red Wings game after that commercial came out, and they played it on the Jumbotron during the first commercial timeout. And I was behind the Red Wing bench, number rose up, and you see Scotty Bowman looking up, and you could read his lips going, what the fuck is that? And just laughing. Like it was a great commercial, just well done. So I'm trying to think. There's
I'd say that Detroit. I mean, I'm not a Detroit fan, but they've been really good to me over the years, and their stadium is awesome. I mean, I did a whole behind the scene tour and everything, and it was pretty cool. They took me down through the locker rooms and their equipment rooms and everything else, and it was pretty neat. So I can't talk bad about Detroit. They're cool. I'm just not a Detroit fan, but everybody there is great.
I do not like the Red Wings, but I have a lot of respect for that organization and their fans. Mm-hmm. One of my good friends from high school, one of my teammates, born and raised in Chicago, but a diehard Red Wing fan, always has been. When the Hawks were in their first cup run in 2010, we were having phone calls. He's like having people over to his house and having watch parties. He's like, I'm having this existential crisis. Like, I feel like I should be happy for the Blackhawks and the city. He goes, but I'm not. He's like, I want them to lose. I'm like, I respect that. You're a Red Wings fan. Just like I want the Red Wings to lose whenever they're playing a game, yet alone the finals.
Right. But you at Minnesota when the Hawks play.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I get it. But I think that's some of my favorite Hawks games were Hawks Wings games. It was like 50-50 at the United Center because the Hawks were terrible in the late to mid 90s. And from the moment that puck dropped, you would have the Let's Go Red Wings chant, followed up by the Detroit Sucks, back and forth all game, fans chirping each other. And then you're walking out of the United Center, still chirping each other. But the question is, where are we going to get beers together?
Right.
That's how that rivalry is. Very much like the Bears-Packers rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like each other's teams, but there's a lot of respect for the organizations and the fans because they're smart. They're smart fans too. They know their hockey. St. Louis, it's a little bit different. I think it's a great hockey town. It's getting better, but I don't like their fans. I don't like their teams. I don't like their city. My niece lives there, so I've been through there twice in the last 2 years. It's like I don't like St. Louis. There's nothing about it I like. And it's been hard for me as I've gotten older to really come to appreciate Curtis Joseph in his play. And just after reading his book and everything he went through as a child, I'm like, oh my God, how can I not like this guy? But he still ended the Blackhawks season one too many times. Therefore, as a goalie, I do not like him. Even though my game, if somebody asked me who's your game most like, I would say Curtis Joseph. But I'm like, no, I still don't like him. It's nothing personal. I'm sure he would understand. I hear he's a fantastic human being, and I would probably agree if I met him. But he wore the blue note. I don't like him.
Right.
I was, in fact, when I was talking to Grant Fuhrer, I was telling him about that. He's like, I get it. It's you're right to have those feelings, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Noah's a really cool guy that I met over the years. So I used to paint a lot for Calgary, like Kerry Ramo and Jonas Hiller, Rito Berra, all those guys when they were with Calgary. And at the time, Clint Malarchuk.
Yes, he's got a story.
Yes, and I forgot where we were at, but we were at a table with him, my wife and I, and I never met him. I knew his story, but I didn't really know a lot of it. I mean, I just wasn't like into that at the time, and we were just talking, and for him to hear it firsthand, and for him to really tell me exactly everything that happened was just phenomenal. And super nice guy. We still talk today, and that's one goalie that was out of everybody that I've met and all the things that I have done. You were saying like Curtis Joseph, but he was one guy that was pretty cool to talk to and to get to know and hear his story and stuff.
I know he's got a podcast now with another fellow, and it's focused on mental health. Because that was a big part of his post-accident.
Yes.
I can't even call it an accident, just post-injury. It was the mental toll it took on him. And so they talk a lot about, mental health recovery after traumatic incidences, which is, that's one thing is I think society has grown. We're more aware to some of that trauma. I know your wife's a veteran, so especially the work with veterans when they come back, I think has been great in the last 15 plus years. We've come a long way. But yeah, Clint's one of those goalies I would love to get on one day. And, much like you in your job, my podcast is a one-person operation outside of my day job. So it's, finding time to reach out to goalies. And I've talked to, some guys like, hey, Connor Beaupre on. His dad was Don Beaupre. And, I was like talking to him, and it was like, well, Dad, I'd love to have your father on. But it was like, don't worry, I'm not going to come through to get to your dad. I've always told the goalies I've had on, I'm not going to use them for their Rolodexes. That's not the way I want to do it.
Right.
Because then it just gets murky, in my opinion. Now I've had a few guys that I've talked to. In fact, I had the fellow from Vintage Goalie Brand on, and he's like, hey, I had coffee with Don Strauss the other day and was talking about the podcast. He wants me to give you his info. I was like, fantastic. I was like, that works for me. But yeah, so we've been talking, close to 2 hours. So I don't want to keep you too long.
No worries.
I don't know if you've listened to any of the past episodes, but I close every episode with a list of 10 questions. I used to call them rapid fire questions, but they take a while sometimes. We probably won't go over all of them because some of them are focused on actually playing goalie. But the first one, before I ask it, did you play organized sports at any time growing up? Because if so, this question is...
I got some work being done on the house, so
hey, no problem.
Go ahead.
No problem. But if you played organized sports at any time, what is like the craziest coaching moment from your playing days? And to give you some background, this idea came to me. I was at a Hawks game, sitting in the end, the visitors end right above the Zamboni entrance, and they were playing the Florida Panthers. I remember Tebow was in net at the far end. Eddie Olczyk was still playing. I like that because we went to the same high school. But Roberto Luongo was in net. I was excited to see him play. And Mike Keenan was coaching the Florida Panthers and had a Mike Keenan game where he lost his shit and starts throwing sticks out on the ice at the referees and somehow didn't get a penalty. But, what's one of those crazy coaching moments, if you have any?
Honestly, I really don't have anything that stands out in my mind. Only organized sports that I played was football in high school, and our coach was kind of lame. So yeah, didn't really have anything.
What high school did you play for?
Maine South. We were.
That was a good football team back then.
Yeah. They went to state that year when I was there. I was kind of a screw up growing up, so I kind of went to a few different high schools, but Maine South was one of the ones that I actually kind of try to focus and get into sports and get some type of structure.
Yeah.
But they were pretty good that year. But yeah, our coach wasn't really that. He was just a normal coach. Nothing really stands out.
So the next question, I'm going to turn it into a two-part. And the first one is, what is your favorite goalie mask that you've seen that you didn't paint?
That's a good question. That is a really good question. So it takes a lot to impress me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't know. It's just I've been around great artists my whole career. Between painting masks and all kinds of other different things, and I've been all over the world at different shows and different events, and so it takes a lot to impress me. But I think some of them. I don't have a particular favorite mask per se. But one of the guys that I like now, his style, and he's an up and coming painter, and I like what he does is Dave Freed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's doing really cool stuff. I told him, I've talked to him a few times, and I mean we're friends. We've talked, but I told him, I'm getting older. I'm going to be retiring, and I like seeing the new and up and comer guys and what they're doing, and I like his style. I like what he does, and I'm a fan of what he does. He does really good work.
Yeah, I like hearing that because I've been in communication with Dave, and I'm going to be getting him on the podcast here pretty shortly too.
There you go. He'll probably say something bad about me. No, I'm kidding.
That SOB.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He actually did me a favor. So Bosch Tools wanted to do some hard hats and at their show in Vegas, and I guess he had some issues of like a visa or whatever to get into the United States to be. He's in Canada, so he referred them to me, and I went ahead and took that job on, and I flew out to Vegas and did some stuff for them, and I still continue to do stuff. I'm about to do some stuff next week for them actually, but cool. He actually hooked me up with them, so he's a good guy. Him and his wife, they're good people, and I like his style, and I'm excited to see where he goes in his career. Yeah,
that's cool. And like you said, perfect person to say you like him, because him and I have been having conversations. It's just when does it make work for our schedule? So, I asked what's your favorite goalie mask you haven't painted. What's been your favorite mask that you've painted? I know it's kind of a Sophie's choice, but.
Okay. So I have one mask that has not been played in. It is a one of a kind in the world. There's not another one like it. There won't be another one like it. I did it for CCM.
Is that the light up mask?
That's the light up mask. Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. So a friend of mine owns the company Luminlore. It's a company that created that paint that lights up with you have to run run electricity to it and it lights up. And so CCM wanted to do something that they can take with them at their shows and put it on display and everything. And so I painted that for them, and it's phenomenal. It's one of my favorite masks. And so after that year, they weren't going to use it anymore because it's the next year they want a new display or whatever.
Yeah.
So I told the rep, I said, hey, I want that mask back. I want that mask.
Yeah.
So which I at the time when I painted it, I had no idea. I wasn't expecting to get it back. It is what it is. I did it for them.
Right.
Whatever. So we worked it out. I said, I'll paint a mask for you. If you got a potential goalie and you want to, steer him into using your equipment, I'll paint a mask for you geared towards him, and you guys can, that's what those guys do. Yeah, I mean, every one of them, they're like, I'm gonna send this goalie a mask of ours. Can you paint something cool on it so we can get them to use our shit? And that's just how it is.
Yeah.
But so I said, I'll paint a mask for you guys, but give me that one back. So I have it now, and it's
nice.
It's upstairs in my little I had a little man cave, all the goalies, everything that I have gotten over the years is up there, which is kind of it's pretty cool. If you're into hockey and you ever make it down here, I'll take you up there. You're going to be like, holy shit, there's some really cool stuff up here. But I have that mask, and that is probably my favorite mask. And I don't know, I've had so many people ask me to buy it, and I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever get rid of it because it's one of a kind. There's not another one like it in the world ever.
And that was made a couple years ago, and with the advancements we've had in paints and just LEDs and fiber optics and everything, it makes me wonder how long until there is a light up mask that can be worn in a game.
So I'm always in contact with them because I'm like, I'm going to be the first one that does that in the NHL. So I mean that's a given that I am going to be the first one to do it. So that one at the time, so they actually coated the entire mask. So you had to have certain amount of power to run that, and the transformer was just way too big. You couldn't hide that in padding or anything.
Right.
It just was not going to happen. But obviously things have evolved, but it's still the same concept. But I'm thinking if I can do something where it doesn't have to be the whole entire mask, maybe certain sections or something where it doesn't take that much of power that we can actually hide. But then again, once we do that, then we have to go through all the testing to make sure that we're not putting a player in any jeopardy. You have to have impact testing and all, and that's a pain in the ass. Again, I'm a one-man guy, so one day it might happen. If they can develop to where, hey, it's like as thin as a watch battery, and we can just, nobody's even going to know. I can just.
That's what I'm thinking.
And it is what it is, but it's not to that point yet. So once it is, it'll be done, and I will be the man to do it, and we'll be on this Tendy Talk again, and I will be talking about it.
Well, and I think of Ben Bishop and his, neon mask sort of at the end of his career. That would have been the perfect application for that, not the whole mask.
Right. Yeah,
just
is
enough
that the Blade Runner mask?
Yeah, because they had the paint where it glowed in the dark, but to your point, the only time you see that is in the promo pictures. But that would have been the perfect one to turn it on. Now, I'm going to guess too, the league will probably have restrictions of, well, you can't have the lights on in play or anything, but there's going to be times when it, during warm-ups and the light shows and everything, it'd be perfect time for that. So it'll be easy access, just a little button somewhere, whatever, turn it on. But doing work around the house. I got my headlamp, and it's very simple. I just push the button, it gets brighter, turns it off.
Right. Right.
So my next question is, what's your favorite rink you've been to?
As far as like a stadium or just a rink?
Any rink. I leave it open to a rink because sometimes those small little barns have much more sentimental meaning to us.
I like that Fox Valley. Fox Valley, that's out by Aurora, Illinois.
Yep.
It's where Aurora University plays.
Yep. Yeah, it's a nice little rink.
Yeah. I've been there a couple times to see them because they're a client of mine. And when I go home, I'll come by and visit and catch some practice or whatever. And I like that rink. That or Central DuPage was cool at the time. I mean, it's been forever. I don't even know if it's even there anymore. Johnny's what's his name? Johnny's
Ice House, the original.
House. Yep. Downtown where the Hawks used to practice. I don't know if they still practice there or not.
Yeah, last I heard, the place was for sale, but part of the condition of the sale is it couldn't be used for an ice rink.
Oh, really?
They're basically selling the land, which is a bummer because it's a great rink. I would go play rat hockey there because they had like a lunchtime rat hockey. And you get all these guys that work downtown that were good. But I would skate there when I was home on breaks. And it was great because in the summertime, I only came home for one summer when I was in college. I stayed up there to work our hockey camps. But the one summer I came home and interned at ABC, I was skating there. And it was like the second week. Billy Zito, the Panthers GM, he was a player rep at the time. And he was skating with us all the time. And some of his players were starting to come back to town to do summer training. They came out for like one or two rat hockeys, and they're like, no, like they were definitely toning it down quite a bit. Because I mean, you had 72-year-old Father Murray out there, the retired Navy chaplain. Right. You had the one guy I knew, Pat, who he was a carpenter, so he was missing half of these three fingers, so it's not like he had a good grip on the stick. He did have some skilled guys out there too. It was like it wasn't a good practice for him. So Billy wound up getting his own ice, and it wasn't just his players on, but he had some other guys out there. And the one day I got asked to go out, and they needed a goalie, and so the rest of the summer I got to skate with them. And I think of the Spittin' Chicklets podcast because they brought Timmy Stapleton on, and Stapleton played for Fenwick, and he scored a few goals on me in high school. But I believe he was at that skate too. And as he tells the story on Chicklets, he was at the Billy Zito skates, and Zito saw something in him and got him into the NHL and playing pro hockey. And I'm like, wait a minute. I was at those skates too. And Billy never talked to me except to collect my $15 for ice money every day. I'm a little bit offended.
Why didn't I get that opportunity?
Yeah, the only time he spoke to me was to collect my money. But it's goalies for those skates goalies usually skate free, but he's like $15. It's like, Jesus. So I went home. And it's like, Mom, Dad, at dinner. It's like, I need $15 tomorrow. And they're both like, why? Because the guy I interned with, Rob, he was great, and he knew I was doing an unpaid internship. I was a poor college kid, so he'd usually buy lunch, and they're like, why? Do you need it for lunch? I was like, no, I need it for this skate. My dad's like, I thought rat hockey was free. I was like, yeah, but I was asked to skate with some pro guys tomorrow. And they're like, all right, here you go. So they start giving me the money, and it was like each day they were giving me $15. And so it was like the third skate, Billy wasn't there for the day. And Joe Corvo, he was a pretty good hockey player from Chicagoland area. He played a number of years in the NHL, went to a finals, and he was collecting the money that day. But I read in the paper that morning that he signed a new contract. I think it was like 3-year, $5 million contract. And he pulled up in a brand new H2. And I'm sitting next to him in the locker room, and he's bitching about the $15. And I look at him, it's like, are you shitting me? At that, the whole locker room goes quiet. And they're like, uh-oh. And he's like, what? And it's like, you're bitching about $15. He's like, yeah, that's a lot of money. He's like, did I read in the paper this morning that you signed a 3-year, $5 million contract? Yeah. Is that your Hummer brand new sitting out front? Yeah. I go, I'm an unpaid in college intern. You don't hear me bitching about $15, do you? And he just drops his head and he goes, I got you covered today, kid. And he made sure the rest of the summer somebody in that locker room covered my $15.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But it was because we were laughing about it afterwards. It's like, well, you grow up in a blue collar family, and yeah, you get a nice bank account, but you're still a blue collar.
Yep.
It's like, I get it, but think about who you're around before you start pitching about it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that was a fun skate. Rob Brown and Steve Martins, they were two guys on the tail end of their career skating with the Wolves at the time, and they were out there and they're just hilarious. But it was fun because Dad was working at the 911 center at the time. It was post 9/11, so he was working with the Office of Emergency Management, and he could come over on lunchtime and see me skating with these pro guys. And he saw me stop an NHL slap shot and breakaway. So it was like pretty cool to do that and then look up and see him smiling.
That's awesome.
So you've been around the game enough that you've had to have heard some. What's the best chirp you've heard from a hockey player? Directed at you, directed at other players, just getting somebody?
I think I'm going to pass on that one.
That's all right. I can tell that there's some you've heard, but you're like, I probably shouldn't repeat them.
Yeah, exactly. I probably have 2 or 3 but then I would probably be getting a text after I got done, after they've seen this or heard about it, and I would not. Yeah, I wouldn't.
You're protecting the innocent. I get it.
Yes.
So you don't have to play the game to have one of these. What's the best the worst post game drink?
Beer. I hate beer.
That's fair then. I'm like,
yes. I'm a bourbon connoisseur.
Yep.
I mean, obviously you can tell, but I prefer whiskey or bourbon. So when I get done at a game, typically when I go to a game, I know somebody or somebody got me something, and we have cool seats or we have some type of access, and I get drinks or whatnot. But then when we're done and we go somewhere, it's like they want to like serve beer or something. I'm like, I don't want that.
That's because good bourbon or good whiskey is a lot more expensive than beer.
Yes, true.
Which if you like bourbon and whiskey, I got to plug one of my former guests, Eddie Belfour, Hall of Fame goalie. He's got his whiskey. I'm not quite the connoisseur of you. In fact, I'm not a huge bourbon or whiskey fan, but when he sent me some, I was able to drink it and it was smooth. So it's like, this must be decent.
Nice. Yes. Now his mask was one of the ones that really inspired me. And, I've known Miska for a long time, and I've worked with Warwick forever. Gary Warwick and all those guys, and I've actually painted a lot of masks for Allen Americans, which obviously Belfour is a part owner of. But yeah, it was funny that you mentioned that. But
I've actually met Todd. I've been to his studios. I was writing a piece for InGoal magazine years ago.
InGoal, yes.
And Todd's studio was maybe 20 minutes up the road from me where I lived in Minnesota. So I went up there, and like most goalies, Todd and we talked for about 40 minutes for the article, and probably another 2 hours just goaltending and seeing his little shop. And it was funny, his shop was a pole barn where, he had a nice little office space in the back and a paint booth. And then the rest of it was, he had all of his toys parked in there, from his 4-wheelers, snowmobiles, quads, and he had a nice little TV area and everything set up. It was like, you've got to figure it out here, Todd. And when I had Eddie on, I was asking him if at the time, Todd's son Hunter was playing for Colorado's minor league team, the Eagles. Right. And so he had the Belfour mask, and I was talking to Eddie. He said, no, I don't know how you feel about other people with that mask, but Hunter has that, out in Colorado, and he just thought that was great. He's like, of all the people to wear it at the pro level other than him, like he's the one that should wear it because his dad is the one that painted it.
Right.
He thought that was great. And I remember, I know Hunter's now over in Russia playing, but another year he had the Manny Fernandez that his dad painted for Colorado too. And it's just like some of the iconic late 90s masks, Todd was responsible for those.
Yep.
But he's retired now, still paints for Hunter, but he's pretty much retired from painting now too.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah. I think he's got a sign business or something like that. He
a
lot with.
Yeah, he does billboards because he said that was something he could do to pay the bills when he was first starting out, and it still went well for him. I know he had some cancer battle too not too long ago that he came through, so I think that was part of the retirement.
I got you.
Yeah. So, but no, Todd was a great guy. We just sat there and talked hockey for 2 hours after the interview was done. So the last question: what advice do you have for young goalies?
For young goalies?
Yes.
Young goalies or young painters?
Let's go both.
Okay.
2-part question.
So, I mean, young goalies, just be humble. Listen to your coaches. Show respect. I like the way that a lot of these coaches and a lot of these teams bring up these players that they have a good head on their shoulders. They're very respectful, and that's something that's very admirable. And I would tell them to continue that. As far as young painters, again, it kind of goes the same way. Be humble, be respectful. Know the guys that have paved the way for you to be where you're at, and respect that.
Yeah.
There's so many guys out there now that they learn how to paint on TikTok or YouTube, and then the next thing you know, they're out there. They think they're the God's gift of the earth, and they, try to steal every job they can, and they do it for $400, and it's ridiculous. But if you just take your time, pay your dues, respect the people who paved the way, good things will happen for you. It all takes time. I started, the internet just came out. There was hardly any internet. I had to bust my ass to be where I'm at. And now people just get on TikTok, and the next thing you know, they got 100 people wanting to paint their mask for them. And it's like, that's not how things work. But that generation, they don't have that mindset. They're like, well, shit, I'm already outdone you. They have that mindset. But
they don't have the hustle.
Right. If the internet stopped tomorrow, they wouldn't have a clue what to do. They would be like, I'm lost. They don't know what marketing is. They don't know what anything is, but they know how to make a stupid video. But just be humble, respect the people who paved the way, and things will happen to you as long as you just are that type of artist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Don't rock the boat and come in out of the blue and think you're just going to take over the world, because it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Otherwise you could be a flash in the pan.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Jason,
I've seen so many painters come and go over the years. It's ridiculous. These guys, it's the flavor of the month. Everybody jumps on them. Everybody wants to paint. And then, they're a douchebag and they screw people over, or something happens and they're out of business and they're gone and they never see them again or whatever, but
it's funny following all the goalie stuff I do. Yeah. You see painters come and go, and some of them are talented, but those are the ones where it's like, well, they clearly didn't know how to run the business. And then there's others that aren't talented, but think they are, and then can't take the criticism to get better. Because it's like, okay, I've seen it in the one goalie Facebook group, the GGSU, where, a painter will be like, honest opinion, what do you think? And once in a while, one of them takes the criticism and gets better. And other times they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, well, yeah, some of these guys actually are painters in here. And they're,
Right.
you know, in fact, Frank Cipra's in that particular group. That's how I was able to connect with him. So it's like, if he's telling you, you could be better here and here, maybe listen to him. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's stories all the time with people's egos.
Right.
But Jason, I appreciate you taking time out. I know we've been communicating, and we'll keep talking. It's been fun talking to you. And,
oh yeah, for sure.
I'm sure as I keep thinking about my mask and one day decide what I'm going to put on there, we'll be having conversations.
Oh yeah, no worries. I got you.
The problem is I've had a couple fantastic mask painters on you, Don, Frank, Kyle, where it's like at some point I'm going to have to make a decision, and I'm going to have to be like, who's going to paint it? Because it's not like I can do, something where it's like, all right, you paint a little bit, he paints a little bit, he paints a little bit. It's like,
right.
What do I do? But it's Don's kind of retired from, goalie mask painting. So it's like, okay, you take that one off my plate now. That helps. But it's like, I think there are good guys out there.
A collaboration between me and Frank would be pretty cool. So like maybe have him do half a mask, clear coat it, send it to me. I'll sand it and do the other half.
Oh, that might be cool.
Now that would be an original, because I don't think there's any mask from like multi-mask painters painting the same mask.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, like multi-generational, like Frank is part of the old school.
Right.
He helped pioneer mask painting.
Yes.
That would be cool. Because he also painted Eddie Balfour's original mask too.
Right. Yeah.
Who was my idol. He's why I got into the position. So that would be kind of a cool.
So not only would it be cool for you, but it would also be an honor for me, because I love Frank's work. I've seen his stuff, and he's phenomenal.
I might have to
be cool for me.
I might have to run that one by him. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. For sure.
But well, like you said, I don't want to take up much more of your time. I appreciate you taking the time. I'll make sure to include all of your social and website stuff in the show notes, so that I would say them, but we're goalies mostly listening to this. We've taken too many pucks to the head. We're not going to remember. It's much easier for us to go into the show notes and just click it, and magic happens. Right. Too many pucks to the head, which is why we keep coming to you guys to paint our masks.
Yep.
So 1 second. All right. It was great getting a chance to talk with Jason after following him on social media for so long. Be sure to follow him on Instagram at Livery Art Studios. That's Livery Art Studios. And scroll back through some of the great masks he's painted in the past. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube simply by searching for Wash Up Goalie, and I'll pop up. Visit washupgoalie.com for some great hockey-related content, my beer league hockey video highlights, and of course, all podcast episodes. If you want some Wash Up Goalie or Tendy Talk apparel, be sure to visit my Threadless shop by clicking the merchandise link on my website. Be sure to check out the full lineup of hockey-related podcasts on the Hockey Podcast Network as well. There are too many lists here, but shows like the Nassau Men Hockey Podcast, the Through the Island Podcast, or the Broadway Boys Hockey Podcast can all be found. I need to thank the band The Zambonis for allowing me to use their music on my episodes. You can download their music on iTunes or listen wherever you stream music from. I'm always working on lining up other goalies to talk to. In fact, that was one of the reasons I had the break. It's getting harder and harder. So if you are a goalie or have connections to a goalie who I should talk to, shoot me an email at washupgoalie39@gmail.com or send me a DM on social media. And let's not forget, if you are a brand that wants to sponsor the show, be sure to reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk. And finally, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment on the podcast platform you're listening on. It's a quick action on your part that helps others find Tendy Talk. So, until next time, keep your stick on the ice and your body square to the puck.
good news?
Well, Dave,